You and I both know there comes a moment, that quiet, terrifying second, when you look at your life and realize you've been walking in circles. You wake up, go through the same motions, make the same choices, think the same thoughts, and then wonder why nothing changes. It's not because life's unfair. It's because repetition without growth is the slowest form of death. Listen, your future is screaming for a new version of you, but you keep showing up as the old one. You can't expect transformation while living in repetition. The patterns that kept you safe yesterday are the very chains that hold you back today. You want a breakthrough, then you've got to break something, your habits, your excuses, your comfort. Change doesn't come when it's convenient, it comes when you decide enough is enough. Right now, the clock is ticking. Every second you stay the same, you're rehearsing the past instead of creating the future. So here's the truth: if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten, and you'll stay exactly where you've always been. Comfort is the silent agreement we make with mediocrity. It's that invisible contract that whispers, "You're safe here," while quietly stealing your potential. Both men and women fall into this trap, different in form, identical in effect. For men, comfort often disguises itself as control, the steady paycheck, the familiar routine, the illusion that stability equals success. For women, it often wears the mask of responsibility, putting others first, keeping peace, maintaining order. Yet underneath it all, comfort numbs the fire that once made you hungry, bold, unstoppable. Growth begins the moment you question your comfort. Most people aren't unhappy because they lack opportunity. They're unhappy because they've stopped demanding more from themselves. You see, the brain is wired for survival, not fulfillment. It's designed to keep you from risk, from change, from pain. But what it doesn't understand is that avoiding pain also means avoiding power. Every breakthrough you've ever had came from a moment when you were uncomfortable, when you dared to move toward the thing you feared most. Men often confuse comfort with success. They think reaching a certain level means they've made it. But the truth is, the moment you stop challenging yourself, you start declining. You can't build strength without resistance, and you can't build character without discomfort. That's why the gym isn't just a metaphor, it's a mirror. The same principle applies to life: no pressure, no progress. Women, on the other hand, are often conditioned to equate comfort with harmony. They avoid disrupting others, minimize their needs, and overextend themselves in the name of care. But when you constantly shrink to make others comfortable, you silently agree to live beneath your potential. The irony is that comfort doesn't stay comfortable for long. What once felt safe eventually becomes suffocating. You start feeling restless, anxious, even guilty, because deep down your soul knows you're meant for more. That's the psychology of stagnation, when your spirit wants to expand, but your habits keep you small. You don't need a new opportunity, you need a new standard. You need to raise what you expect from yourself, not from the world. Comfort feeds the ego but starves the spirit. It tells you that you're doing fine, even when you're fading inside. It convinces you that waiting for the right time is wisdom, when in reality it's fear dressed as patience. Every human being, man or woman, was built to evolve. The difference between those who thrive and those who merely survive is simple. One embraces discomfort as a teacher, while the other resists it as an enemy. The next level of your life will demand a new version of you. That means breaking the pattern of what's familiar. It means being willing to feel awkward, uncertain, even scared. Because the truth is, the life you crave isn't hiding behind comfort. It's hiding behind the challenge you've been avoiding. And until you decide that staying the same is more painful than changing, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten, no matter how much you dream of more. Every lasting transformation begins with a shift in state. Your emotions determine your energy, and your energy determines your actions. Most people try to change their lives while staying in the same emotional patterns that created their problems. You can't think your way out of a state of fear, frustration, or apathy. You have to move out of it. Change begins the moment you change your physiology, your focus, your language, your breath. You've seen it before. When someone's body collapses, their mind follows. But when you stand tall, breathe deep, and engage your focus on what you can control instead of what you've lost, your entire world begins to respond differently. Your state is the foundation of your story. Men and women both carry internal narratives that define who they are and what's possible for them. For men, the story often sounds like, "I need to be strong, I can't fail, I have to figure it out alone." For women, it often whispers, "I have to hold it all together. I can't let anyone down. I must be everything for everyone." These stories shape behavior more than circumstance ever could. They create invisible boundaries, dictating what risks you take, what love you accept, and what dreams you chase. But here's the truth: your story isn't your identity, it's your script. And any script can be rewritten once you decide to step into a different state. Most people live on emotional autopilot. They react to life instead of designing it. They wake up tired, rush through the day, complain about what they don't have, and wonder why nothing changes. But the mind is like a GPS. It can only guide you toward what you focus on. If you focus on what's missing, your brain will find more lack. If you focus on what's possible, your brain will find solutions. Men often drown in frustration when they feel powerless, believing anger equals strength. Women often drown in overwhelm, believing exhaustion equals love. But power and love both require presence, not reaction. The moment you choose to direct your focus instead of surrendering it, you start reclaiming your life. Changing your state doesn't mean ignoring pain. It means using it. Every emotion is energy, and energy can be redirected. Fear can become fuel. Doubt can become drive. Pain can become purpose. When you learn to shift your emotional state, you stop being controlled by external forces and start becoming the architect of your experience. That's why the people who seem unstoppable aren't luckier. They've just trained themselves to master their inner state faster than their circumstances can break them. Your story is the lens through which you see the world, and it's built from the meanings you assign to your experiences. Two people can go through the same event. One grows, the other breaks. The difference isn't in what happened, it's in the meaning each one gave it. If a man sees failure as proof he's not enough, he'll shrink. If he sees it as feedback that he's growing, he'll rise. If a woman sees rejection as a reflection of her worth, she'll close off. If she sees it as redirection towards something better, she'll expand. The story determines the outcome. When you shift your story, you shift your destiny. But that shift begins with state. You can't tell an empowering story from a disempowered state. You have to raise your energy before you rewrite your meaning. That's why emotion always precedes motion. Move your body, change your breath, interrupt the pattern of hesitation, and your brain will follow. Suddenly, what once felt impossible becomes inevitable because you're no longer operating from survival, you're operating from creation. The truth is, your life is a reflection of the state you live in and the story you tell yourself about it. When you change your state, you awaken power. When you change your story, you awaken purpose. And when both align, you become unstoppable, not because life got easier, but because you finally decided to stop living the same story expecting a different ending. Pain is the most honest voice life will ever speak to you. It doesn't whisper, it roars. It shows up when something within you is demanding change. Most people spend their entire lives running from pain, numbing it, denying it, avoiding it. But pain has only one mission: to wake you up. It's not there to punish you, it's there to instruct you. Every struggle, every heartbreak, every failure carries a message inside it, a lesson about who you've been and who you must become. When you stop fighting it and start listening, pain transforms from your enemy into your greatest ally. Men and women experience pain differently, but both are shaped by how they respond to it. For men, pain often hides beneath silence. They're taught that vulnerability equals weakness, that emotions are something to suppress, not explore. So they bury their pain under work, distractions, or pride. Yet that buried pain doesn't disappear. It leaks out as anger, disconnection, and restlessness. For women, pain often hides behind strength. They endure quietly, holding everything together, taking care of others while their own soul aches for acknowledgement. They wear the mask of composure, convincing the world they're fine, while inside they're carrying storms no one sees. Both masks, silence and strength, can become prisons if you never face the truth that pain isn't a burden to hide, but a guide to follow. Growth never happens in comfort. Think about the times you've truly evolved. It wasn't when life was easy, it was when life tested you. Pain strips away illusion. It forces you to see what's real, what matters, and what must change. When you lose something you thought you couldn't live without, when someone betrays you, when your plan collapses, those moments break the old version of you so a stronger one can emerge. The key is to stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? That one question changes everything. Pain exposes your patterns. It reveals the habits, beliefs, and fears that have been limiting your life. If you keep attracting the same kind of relationships, facing the same disappointments, or hitting the same walls, pain is trying to show you that the problem isn't the world, it's the pattern you keep repeating. For men, this might mean learning that control isn't power, presence is. For women, it might mean realizing that sacrifice without boundaries isn't love, it's self-erasure. Pain points directly to the lesson you've been avoiding, the one that will free you if you finally face it. The reason pain hurts so much is because it challenges your identity. It tears apart the story you've told yourself about who you are. A breakup can make you question your worth. A business failure can make you doubt your ability. But the truth is, pain isn't destroying you, it's redefining you. It's showing you where you've been living too small, too safe, too attached to an outdated version of yourself. When you learn to sit in that discomfort without running from it, something powerful happens, you gain clarity, you see what truly matters and what doesn't. You begin to act not out of fear, but out of purpose. Pain also connects you to others. The very thing you think separates you from people is often what bonds you most deeply. When you allow yourself to be honest about your struggles, you give others permission to do the same. You stop living behind walls and start building bridges. Compassion doesn't come from success, it comes from suffering understood. The man who's faced failure becomes more grounded. The woman who's walked through heartbreak becomes more empathetic. Pain doesn't just teach you about life, it teaches you about humanity. You don't have to love pain, but you do have to respect it. Because every breakthrough you desire is hiding behind something you've been avoiding. Every level of strength, wisdom, and peace is born from a lesson that pain was trying to teach you. And until you stop running and start listening, you'll keep reliving the same wounds, expecting a different healing. Destiny isn't written by luck, circumstance, or timing. It's written by decisions. Every direction your life has taken was determined by a choice you made or refused to make. People love to believe that conditions define them, the economy, their upbringing, their environment, the people around them. But if that were true, no one would ever rise from hardship, and no one would ever fall from privilege. The truth is, conditions influence you, but decisions define you. At any moment, a single decision has the power to redirect your future. The moment you decide what you're no longer willing to tolerate and what you're fully committed to become, your destiny begins to shift. Most people wait for perfect conditions before they act. They tell themselves they'll start when they have more time, more confidence, more money, more support. But that's just another decision, one to postpone their power. The most successful, fulfilled people in the world didn't start when things were easy. They started when things were uncertain. They understood that clarity doesn't come before action, it comes from it. Every small decision you make under imperfect conditions builds the muscle of certainty. You don't need perfect circumstances, you need a decision strong enough to outlast your excuses. Men often define their decisions through logic, calculating risk, weighing outcomes, waiting for the right move. But sometimes that logic becomes a cage that keeps them from acting on instinct or passion. They tell themselves they're being practical, but in reality, they're being paralyzed. Women, on the other hand, often make decisions from intuition, from a deep emotional intelligence that senses alignment or misalignment instantly. Yet they sometimes question that intuition, doubting their inner voice because the world taught them to seek permission before trusting themselves. Both perspectives have power when they merge. The most powerful decision is one that balances logic with intuition, courage with clarity, heart with discipline. Every decision is a declaration of who you are. When you decide to step up instead of back down, to speak up instead of staying silent, to push forward when it's easier to quit, you're shaping your identity in real time. It's not the grand decisions that build destiny, it's the daily ones. The decision to show up when no one's watching. The decision to keep your promises even when no one will know. The decision to say no to distractions that don't serve your purpose. That's where true transformation happens, in the moments that seem small but echo forever. People often underestimate how much power they give away to their conditions. They blame their past, their boss, their partner, their circumstances. But the moment you blame, you surrender your power. Blame is comfortable. It makes you a victim of what you can't control. Decision is uncomfortable. It makes you responsible for everything you can. The difference between those two mindsets determines everything about the life you create. You can either choose to adapt to your conditions or choose to rise above them, but you can't do both. Every turning point in your life came from a decision made in a moment of emotion. You decided you were done being average. You decided you wouldn't tolerate being treated a certain way. You decided to finally go for it despite the fear. Those are the moments that shape you more than any circumstance ever could. The problem is, most people make emotional decisions unconsciously, based on fear, insecurity, or past pain. They let their history dictate their destiny. But when you become conscious of your power to decide with intention, you stop reacting to life and start designing it. Your decisions are the steering wheel of your destiny. They don't just determine what you get, they determine who you become. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, growth over fear, truth over approval, you carve a new path in your identity. Life doesn't respond to the conditions you face, it responds to the standard you set. The moment you realize that, you stop waiting for change and start becoming it. The real pain in life doesn't come from change, it comes from staying the same. Most people don't realize that the moment they choose comfort over growth, they begin to decay from the inside out. The mind tries to convince you that staying where you are keeps you safe, but that's the biggest lie fear ever told. Safety without progress turns into stagnation, and stagnation turns into silent suffering. Deep down, you know it. The boredom, the restlessness, the frustration, they're not signs that you're broken, they're signals that you're meant for more. The cost of staying the same is invisible at first, but it compounds over time until you wake up one day wondering how your fire turned into ashes. Fear change is universal. Men and women both feel it, but it shows up differently. For men, the fear often disguises itself as control. They stick to routines, careers, and roles that feel predictable because uncertainty feels like weakness. They say, I'll make a move when I'm ready, but readiness never comes. That desire for control eventually becomes a cage, and that cage starts to shrink every time they ignore the call to evolve. For women, the fear often hides beneath responsibility. They fear disrupting the peace, letting someone down, or being judged for wanting more. They carry the weight of others' expectations, believing that keeping everything stable is noble. But stability without fulfillment isn't peace, it's quiet desperation. Growth always requires loss. The loss of what's familiar, the loss of who you've been, the loss of people who can't follow where you're going. That's why change feels painful. But what most people never calculate is the cost of not changing. Staying the same costs you your potential, your passion, your vitality, and your sense of purpose. You start bargaining with your dreams, telling yourself it's too late, or too risky, or too unrealistic, yet every time you choose comfort over courage, you teach your nervous system to settle for less than it deserves. Change has a price, but so does regret, and regret is always more expensive. The mind loves to exaggerate the risk of change while minimizing the pain of inaction. It says, what if I fail? What if I lose everything? What if I can't handle it? But the better question is, what if you don't? What if staying the same means never discovering what you're truly capable of? What if the very thing you fear losing is what's holding you back from who you could become? The truth is, change isn't the enemy, it's the invitation. It's the universe's way of saying, you've outgrown this version of yourself. Men often measure their lives in terms of results, achievements, and success, but they forget that progress isn't just external, it's emotional, spiritual, and relational. When they stop growing, they lose their edge, their drive, their sense of aliveness. Women often measure their lives in connection and meaning, but when they stop evolving, they feel unseen, unheard, and unfulfilled no matter how much they give. Both are paying a cost every day they choose familiarity over freedom. The longer you wait to change, the more expensive it becomes, not just in opportunity, but in energy, confidence, and self-respect. Change doesn't demand perfection. It demands permission. You don't need to know the whole path, you just need to take the first step. The moment you decide that your fear will no longer dictate your choices, everything begins to shift. Fear will still whisper, but your commitment will speak louder. Every act of change, no matter how small, is a declaration that you value your future more than your comfort. The cost of staying the same is always higher because it drains your life force in silence, while the fear of change lasts only until you move. Once you do, the fear fades, and what's left is freedom. Every transformation begins the moment you turn I can't into I must. The words you speak to yourself become commands to your subconscious mind. When you say I can't, you're not describing your limits, you're declaring them. You're programming your mind to stop searching for solutions. But when you say I must, everything changes. I must activates urgency. It ignites resourcefulness. It forces your brain to find a way, not an excuse. Every great breakthrough in history was born from someone who decided that success wasn't optional, it was necessary. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is often one decision, the decision to make it must happen. Men and women both use I can't as a defense mechanism, but for different reasons. For men, I can't often hides behind pride or fear of failure. They'd rather say it's impossible than risk looking inadequate. They tell themselves they can't change careers, can't express emotion, can't start over, because admitting they can would mean confronting fear head on. For women, I can't often masks exhaustion and self-doubt. They've spent so much energy taking care of everyone else that they forget what it means to take a stand for themselves. They whisper, I can't, not because they're incapable, but because they've been conditioned to believe they must earn permission before they rise. Both carry invisible chains made of words that sound harmless but carry the weight of surrender. When you turn I can't into I must, you flip the internal switch from hesitation to commitment. Your nervous system doesn't respond to wishful thinking. It responds to certainty. Think about the moments in your life when you absolutely had to do something. No excuses, no backup plan, no way out. You didn't have to be motivated. You became unstoppable. When rent had to be paid, when your child was sick, when your back was against the wall, you found a way. That's the power of must. It awakens a level of intensity that should, might, or hope to never will. Most people never tap into their full capacity because they never raise the stakes high enough to make it non-negotiable. The human mind is a meaning-making machine and will always find evidence to support whatever you believe to be true. If you say, I can't, your mind will show you proof. If you say, I must, your mind will move mountains to align with that command. It's not magic, it's focus. Men who decide, I must protect, I must grow, I must lead, become driven by purpose instead of pressure. Women who decide, I must speak, I must create, I must rise, tap into a force that's both fierce and compassionate. The energy of must transcends logic, it's fueled by identity. It's no longer about what you want, it's about who you are. Excuses fade when necessity rises. Most people say they lack discipline, but what they really lack is urgency. They keep negotiating with their goals as if life owes them more time. It doesn't, the clock is ticking, and every, I'll do it someday, is a decision to stay the same. The moment you make something a must, you stop waiting for motivation and start creating momentum. You stop asking, how long will it take, and start asking, how far can I go? That's when you move from dabbling to domination. Turning I can't into I must is an act of defiance against the part of you that wants to play small. It's the rebellion of your higher self against your comfort zone. When you speak the words I must, you rewire your identity from victim to creator. You send a message to life itself that you are no longer negotiating your potential. You are declaring it. When that declaration becomes your standard, not your hope, life responds. Because the universe doesn't yield to those who try, it yields to those who decide.